Blake Shelton, one of country music's most recognizable figures and a man who has built a career on heartfelt songs, an easygoing personality, and a deep connection to his Oklahoma roots, has a rule at his ranch that has captured the attention of fans, friends, and the media alike. Despite being married to Gwen Stefani, an international pop icon whose music career has spanned decades, from her early days and no doubt to her successful solo ventures, Shelton's homestead adheres to a musical law that may surprise many. The only music allowed to play throughout the expanse of property is that of George Strait, the man often referred to as the king of country. Shelton revealed a seemingly lighthearted yet serious personal decree during an appearance on a late-night talk show, where, dressed in his signature plaid shirt and cowboy hat, he explained with a chuckle that his ranch sound system is devoted exclusively to Strait's timeless catalog. What might have first sounded like a playful quip quickly turned into a headline-making story when Shelton made it clear that, while the audience may have been waiting for a punchline, he was not joking. "When I'm kicking back at home, it's all George all the time," he admitted, adding with affection that although Gwen has her own musical style that he deeply appreciates, his home has become a sanctuary where Strait songs reign supreme. That simple declaration set social media ablaze, with Twitter, Instagram, and other platforms brimming with comments ranging from bewilderment and amusement to admiration, and applause for Shelton's unwavering loyalty to a man whose influence is woven deeply into his own musical DNA. Some fans joke about the idea of Stefani sneaking her own songs into the playlist only to have them immediately shut off, while others express genuine respect for Shelton's devotion to a traditional country legend who has sold over 44 million albums and earned more than 60 #1 hits, feats that make him an unmatched figure in the genre. To understand why Shelton has established this rule, one must look back to his upbringing in Ada, Oklahoma, where country music was not just entertainment but a cultural cornerstone. Growing up surrounded by the smooth baritone voice of George Strait, as well as his storytelling lyrics and songs like Amarillo by Morning and The Chair, Shelton found his musical identity shaped and molded by Strait's artistry. In interviews over the years, Shelton has described Strait as the gold standard of country music, someone who sings in a way that feels like he is narrating the lives of his listeners. And for Shelton, that meant narrating his own. In a Rolling Stone interview, Shelton even confessed that listening to Strait feels like listening to his own biography, and that sense of connection has carried over into his adult life and career. It is not surprising, then, that when Shelton retreats to his ranch, his refuge from the constant spotlight of Nashville and Hollywood, he surrounds himself with the sounds of Strait's music, letting it serve as the backdrop for everything from quiet evenings on the porch sipping whiskey as the Oklahoma sky blazes orange at sunset, to long afternoons working the land, hunting, fishing, or grilling steaks. Friends who have visited the ranch describe the experience of hearing Strait's voice flow through property as almost reverent, noting that even rowdy groups fall silent when one of the King's ballads begins to play. One visitor recalled an evening when someone attempted to switch on a pop track, only for Shelton to immediately put a stop to it, reportedly yelling, "This ain't no disco. Tonight, George is on stage." That level of devotion has become a signature quirk of Shelton's personality, one that even Gwen Stefani has come to accept and find endearing. In a lighthearted joint interview, Stefani admitted that she once tried to sneak one of her own songs into playlist, only to be met with a look from Shelton that made her feel as though she had broken some unspoken law of the land. With a laugh, she admitted she now understands that George is his guy, and that her husband's passion for Strait's music is something that cannot be interfered with. Though her own music, spanning genres of ska, pop, rock, and even a touch of punk, is a world away from Strait's traditional twang, Stefani reportedly finds it charming that Shelton holds onto a piece of his past so firmly, recognizing as a way of honoring where he came from and the influences that shaped him into the man he is today. This rule also makes sense when viewed through the lens of Shelton's career. From his early hit Austin to later successes like Honeybee and Sangria, Shelton has always carried with him an approach to music that mirrors Strait's own. Simple yet profound storytelling, melodies that resonate without overcomplication, and a vocal delivery that feels approachable, warm, and unforced. Nashville producer Scott Hendricks has noted that while Shelton does not mimic Strait's style, the influence is undeniable, audible in the authenticity and charm that permeates each of his recordings. For Shelton, Strait is not simply a favorite artist, but a guiding compass. Someone who demonstrated how country music could be both deeply personal and universally relatable, and this admiration has translated into a household ritual where Strait songs provide the constant soundtrack to daily life. Fans online have been quick to embrace this revelation, with some dubbing it the most Blake Shelton thing ever, and others even creating George Strait at Shelton's Ranch playlist to try to replicate the atmosphere in their own homes. Social media discussions have been filled with both humor and heartfelt respect, with many noting that Shelton's rule is less about excluding other music and more about keeping alive a tradition that connects him to his roots. Within Shelton's 1,200-acre ranch, which boasts a rustic mansion, barns, and vast open fields, Strait's voice becomes more than background noise. It is almost like a member of the household itself. Guests say that whether Shelton is firing up the grill, working on his tractor, or gathering around a bonfire late into the night, songs like Check Yes or No and Blue Clear Sky are always in the air, so much so that it feels unnatural to imagine the space without them. The ranch, then, becomes not just a place of rest, but a character in its own right, a setting where Shelton can step away from the demands of fame and immerse himself in the life he loves: hunting, fishing, family time, and of course, the constant presence of George Strait. This devotion also highlights the intriguing contrast between Shelton and Stefani's musical universes. On the one hand, Stefani's career is filled with high-energy tracks like Just a Girl, Hollaback Girl, and Sweet Escape, songs defined by bold beats, eclectic sounds, and neon-lit vibrancy. On the other hand, Strait's catalog is rooted in traditionalism, songs that are steady, soulful, and grounded in the simplicity of love, heartbreak, and everyday life. To compare them is like comparing a bustling nightclub with flashing lights to a small-town honky-tonk, where the band plays softly in the corner and everyone knows the lyrics. Shelton is comfortable in both worlds. After all, he has performed pop collaborations and supported Gwen's ventures, including singing along to her songs at karaoke nights and championing her Las Vegas residency. But when it comes to his private world at home, it is Strait's music that offers him comfort and peace. Shelton has explained this preference by pointing out that Strait never tries to be anything he is not, a philosophy Shelton himself tries to follow in his career. His music, like Strait's, is about being genuine, telling real stories, and staying true to one's roots even amid fame and commercial pressures. For many fans, Shelton's devotion is seen not just as a charming quirk, but as a statement of authenticity. Despite being married to a global superstar and having his own place in the Hollywood spotlight thanks to shows like The Voice, Shelton has not abandoned his country upbringing, instead choosing to honor it in the most personal way possible. To him, Strait's songs are not simply tracks to fill silence. They are reminders of his identity, his childhood, and the values that shaped him. As one close friend put it, Shelton's devotion to Strait is not about excluding Gwen or anyone else. It is about honoring the music that made him who he is. And the numbers certainly support Strait's towering influence. More than 60 chart-topping singles and an unmatched discography make him a figure whose shadow looms large over country music, and Shelton, who has earned 28 number-one hits of his own, frequently cites Strait as his greatest teacher in the art of storytelling. Even Gwen's fans have chimed in online, expressing that while they adore her, they understand why Blake leans so heavily into Strait's catalog when he is at home. One commenter wrote, "That's a safe place," while another fantasized about the couple slow dancing in their kitchen to Strait's classic ballad, "I Cross My Heart," an image that quickly became a favorite among country music romantics. Ultimately, Shelton's rule playing only George Strait at his Oklahoma ranch is not about shutting out his wife's music, nor is it a gimmick for attention. It is a profound statement about identity, loyalty, and finding grounding in a world that constantly shifts. For Shelton, Strait's songs are the heartbeat of his homestead, the voice that ties together past and present, tradition and modern life, public persona and private retreat. While Gwen Stefani continues to shine brightly with her bold and colorful artistry, the ranch in Oklahoma remains under the dominion of George Strait, the king of country, and that balance seems to work perfectly for the couple. In the end, Shelton's adherence to this rule is not surprising at all when viewed through the lens of his life and career. It is exactly what one would expect from a man who has always worn his heart and his heritage proudly on his sleeve. Shelton's singular devotion to George Strait's music has become more than just a funny anecdote for late-night television or social media chatter. It has evolved into a symbol of how the country star views his life, his art, and even his marriage. To truly appreciate the weight of this devotion, one must look not only at Shelton's upbringing, but also at the cultural role that Strait plays in country music as a whole. For millions of listeners across America, Strait is not simply a singer. He represents stability, tradition, and endurance of a genre that often risks being swept away by commercial fads and cross-genre experiments. Shelton, a man who has lived at the intersection of traditional country and mainstream popularity, seems to have anchored himself in Straight's steadying presence as a way to remain grounded. In many ways, Straight's catalog functions almost like scripture for Shelton, a collection of songs that are not merely entertainment but guiding principles. When Shelton sits on his porch with a glass of whiskey and watches the Oklahoma sun dip below the horizon, the strains of Carrying Your Love With Me or I Cross My Heart are not chosen casually. They are deliberate choices that remind him of who he is and where he comes from. They are part of the rhythm of life at his ranch, echoing through hallways, drifting across fields, and seeping into the very soil of his land. Guests who spend time with him often remark that the experience of being there feels like stepping into a world where time slows down and the modern chaos of the music industry melts away, replaced by the gentle insistence of Straight's voice weaving through every moment. Industry insiders and fellow musicians have also weighed in on Shelton's preference, often with admiration rather than surprise. Producers and collaborators note that Shelton's vocal delivery, with its relaxed ease and unpretentious warmth, has always carried echoes of Straight's influence. Even when singing modern, radio-friendly hits, Shelton manages to retain a sense of tradition, as though some part of Straight's ethos lingers in his phrasing, his tone, or his choice of subject matter. Nashville producer Scott Hendricks has commented that while Shelton does not mimic Strait, the influence is undeniable, describing it as a kind of respectful homage woven into every song Shelton records. This observation aligns with the broader narrative that Shelton's career represents a bridge between eras, between the golden age of country storytelling epitomized by Strait and the more commercial, pop-inflected sound that dominates today's charts. Fans, too, seem to recognize this balance, often pointing out that Shelton's authenticity is what sets him apart in an industry where it is easy to lose one's identity in pursuit of hits. By anchoring himself to Straight's legacy at home, Shelton ensures that his own music continues to resonate with the values that first drew him to country in the first place. The fascination with Shelton's rule has even sparked creative responses from his fan base. Online communities have sprung up to share George Strait at Blake's Ranch playlists, attempting to curate collections of Straight's hits that mirror the atmosphere Shelton describes. Some fans have gone so far as to host their own themed gatherings, playing nothing but Straight's music while barbecuing, drinking, and swapping stories about their favorite Shelton or Strait songs. The trend speaks to the way music can become not just personal but communal, creating shared experiences that transcend individual taste. What might have started as a quirky confession on a talk show has thus evolved into a small cultural phenomenon, with fans eagerly embracing the idea of living, even briefly, in Shelton's world. The humor of imagining Gwen Stefani dancing around her Oklahoma kitchen to George Strait instead of her own pop hits adds another layer of charm to the story, highlighting the playful dynamic between the couple and the ways in which they celebrate their differences. Beyond fan culture, the devotion also raises interesting questions about the role of heritage in an artist's life. For Shelton, the ranch itself is more than just a property. It is a physical manifestation of his roots, a place where he can step away from the glitz of Hollywood and the pressures of celebrity life to reconnect with the land and traditions that shaped him. In that context, Straight's music becomes more than preference. It becomes a soundtrack to a lifestyle. Friends who visit often remark that the ranch feels incomplete without Straight's voice in the background, describing it as though the land itself insists on his presence. One guest even likened Straight's music to furniture, saying it is so woven into the atmosphere of the ranch that it feels permanent, immovable, and inseparable from the experience of being there. Shelton himself has spoken about the peace he finds in this space, where he can hunt, fish, grill, or simply sit on the porch without worrying about the demands of his career. In these moments, Strait songs serve as companions, reflections of a way of life that Shelton has worked hard to preserve despite his fame. Critics and analysts have noted that Shelton's steadfastness is particularly significant in the context of contemporary country music, which often faces criticism for leaning too heavily into pop influences. By publicly aligning himself with Strait, an artist who epitomizes traditional country values and sound, Shelton positions himself as someone who respects and upholds the genre's heritage even while participating in its modern evolution. This balancing act allows him to appeal to both traditionalists who yearn for classic sound and younger listeners who enjoy his more mainstream hits. The result is a career that bridges generations, much like Straight's own, and the ranch rule becomes a symbolic gesture of this dual identity. It reassures fans that no matter how much Shelton experiments or collaborates outside the genre, his heart remains firmly planted in the soil of classic country. In the end, the significance of Shelton's devotion to Strait extends far beyond music. It is about identity, authenticity, and the importance of grounding oneself in the things that truly matter. For Shelton, straight songs are not just melodies or lyrics. They are reminders of family, childhood heritage, and the unchanging values of honesty and simplicity. For Gwen Stefani, embracing her husband's devotion is a way of honoring his roots while still bringing her own vibrant energy to their shared life. For fans, it is a charming glimpse into the personal world of a celebrity couple who often seem larger than life. And for the country music community, it is a reaffirmation that even in an industry driven by change, the core of the genre, storytelling, sincerity, and soul remains alive through artists like Shelton, who carry the torch of those who came before them.